Hi, my name is Sarah Siegri, and for my senior project, I volunteered with the Maine Democratic Party. So I had a few goals going into this project. One of my first goals was doing the most that I could remotely. I wanted to do this because it would demonstrate how minimal effort is needed to help your state and support the ideas that you believe in. And this would also give me the flexibility to let me do what I wanted to do, partaking in the activities that I supported and helping out with those that needed it the most. I was basically my own boss these past few weeks, and I didn't need to depend on anyone else in order for my project to run, which I enjoyed. Although I did have a lot of individuals and organizations that helped me manage what I was doing with my time, I ultimately had the choice to do what I wanted. I also wanted to educate new voters, whether this was my friends and family who needed some insight on the voting process or individuals throughout the state of Maine that didn't have much knowledge and would benefit from some help. Not only did I want to educate others, though, but I also wanted to educate myself. I wanted to learn more about the election process, what goes on in the State House, what I could do to help by taking actions that I believe in. One of my biggest goals, though, was to work in the State House. I really wanted to work with important figures who represented Maine and help them in any way possible, and possibly land some future opportunities so that I could continue doing this work. Before I got started with anything, though, I wanted to gain some knowledge on what was happening in Maine right now. Through some research through the Maine Democratic Party site, I learned about the primary election coming up on June 14th, which will follow with the general election on November 8th. Maine is electing 2 candidates to serve in the U.S. House, one from each of the congressional districts, 1 governor, and 35 Maine state senates for all of the 35 districts. Maine's Democratic Party also publishes press releases that include topics being discussed in the State House. One big issue is the Roe v. Wade overturn, and I was able to learn about some of the Maine candidates' stances on this topic, as well as some motions being pushed to support or contradict it. The League of Women Voters is another organization that is nonpartisan and partners with the Maine Democratic Party, setting up events in order to bring the community together and discuss important topics with opportunities to get involved later on. Some meetings I joined included a discussion on what it can mean for my rights or the rights of my friends or family for the overturning of Roe v. Wade, talking with other volunteers about the many successes of the 2022 Maine legislative session, and a youth council which talks about the process of voting and how to help other young people vote, sharing a commitment to democracy. I also took part in writing letters to individuals throughout the state of Maine through an organization called Vote Forward. These letters consisted of information about the upcoming elections, why it's important to vote, why I think it's important to vote, and why they should vote, and then also how to register. This was a really great way to reach out to some new people and give them additional information to guide them through the voting process. Because I didn't know much about the upcoming elections, it made me realize that a lot of other people may not either. So I decided to help with fundraising as well, designing and making my own stickers and giving them to friends and family in order to raise some money to donate to campaigns throughout Maine. And if you see on my slideshow on the left, those are some of the stickers that I made. So I actually had turned 18 recently, and I realized that I was finally able to register to vote. And I thought about how a lot of my friends probably haven't registered either. So through the League of Women Voters organization, I was eligible to help my peers register. I talked with a lot of my friends, and thankfully a bunch of them wanted to register that hadn't already. So I set up times with them where we could kind of walk through the voting process together. And after they filled out the voter registration paper that you can see on the slide on the left, we got a copy of their license, and then we mailed those into the town offices of the recipients. Even though not all of my friends were 18 yet, I was still able to pre-register them if they were at least 16 years old, and I was also able to register peers who were 17 as they were eligible to vote in the primary election if they were going to turn 18 before the general election. In Maine, you are eligible to register to vote within 21 days of an election by mail, but you can also register in person up to and including on Election Day at your local town office. I continued helping with the voting process through the League of Women Voters online guide. I was able to help with the researching aspect, finding each candidate's information from every town in Maine and putting it onto a Google spreadsheet. The information I found would later be uploaded onto the site 411.org, which is where the online voter guide is located. This was a very tedious process as I had to find the contact information, the party, the location of each candidate from each town and what they were running for, but it was really interesting to learn about all of these new candidates in Maine. I was lucky enough to reach one of my goals, having all of my work done at home, but this also came with a lack of opportunities. Through the Maine Democratic Party and League of Women Voters, there was only so much that I could do in a day, especially because most of the opportunities were starting up in the summertime in preparation for the general election instead of the primary election coming up in June. I ended up performing some of the same activities most of the days, which did feel really repetitive, but I gained a lot of knowledge throughout my project. And it was especially through all of the information I had to read through the press releases to the Zoom meetings that I joined about the election process. A goal I did not reach during this project, though, was being able to work in the State House. I had the pleasure to talk to the director of the Maine Democratic Party, thanks to my project advisor, Mr. Ogilvie, who contacted me with her, but sadly, there weren't any opportunities during the time in Augusta. An upside, though, was that she offered me work in the summer with the field advisor, the fundraising team, and the research team. I'm definitely gonna take part in this opportunity, and I'm really excited to get started and see how the State House functions. I think that this will be an amazing learning experience, getting hands-on and building a network of connections, which will come in handy in the future since I'm interested in pursuing the political field. I'm also going to be taking part in election observation in the summer for the primary election. In one of the training Zooms that I attended, I learned about the different locations that will need help during the primary election in Maine and what tasks I will take part in, such as checking ballot boxes, assisting voters, checking them in to vote. The purpose of this goal is to prevent any election fraud and monitor these stations to make sure nothing suspicious is going on. I personally think that this will also be another fun experience to be hands-on and help assist people during a process as important as this one. So apart from all of the knowledge that I gained about the election process, I learned that helping out was a very tedious process. The voter guide that I helped make consisted of a bunch of research where I had to find all the information included on a candidate, like I mentioned before, and I had to do this for every single candidate in a specific town, and I did multiple towns. I did get to see how big the volunteer community was, though, as we all had to work together in order to support the organizations that we were helping. It felt very empowering being able to take a stance on certain issues, writing about how I felt and my specific position in letters to the editor. Part of the reason I want to do this project is because I'm planning on studying political science in college, and this project only helped me see what I'm interested in and what I'm not. I really enjoyed the election process because I got to see how complex it is and loved all the components that went into supporting one. It was also really easy for me to get involved in these organizations, which is why I urge all of you to support the ideas that you believe in and volunteer just like I did. Now, I wanted to also give a few thank yous to some people who helped my project. First one is Mr. Ogilvie for being my project advisor. Then is Ms. Blyer for preparing me with this presentation through her public speaking class. I also want to thank the Maine Democratic Party and League of Women Voters for allowing me to volunteer with them and provide some fun activities. And I want to thank all of my friends who registered to vote. Questions? Miss Levitt?
Do you think you will continue to volunteer with any of these organizations now that your project is over?
So the question was, will I continue volunteering with these organizations? And I think that I definitely will. Since I already have some stuff in the future, I got like things planned out, and I also want to try and like keep doing this as much as I can because I am really interested in this kind of work. Yeah. So the question was, what was it when you register at 16? So it's where you pre-register. So you could do that through your local town office. You can go and you can pre-register to vote. Ms. Blyer?
How would you encourage more young people to get out and register to vote and actually vote?
So the question was, how could, sorry, could you repeat the question?
How would you encourage, like, what can we do to get more young people to do?
So the question was, how could I encourage more people to get involved and vote and go to the voting booths? I definitely think that, well, first of all, I've done this kind of work before, especially in the 2020 election. I did phone banking, and I think that that really helped a lot because I was able to just call a bunch of different Mainers, and that helped them register to vote. And with young people, I feel like, well, there's like some already kind of like campaigning that's happening to like show that there are these things going on. Yeah, I don't really know exactly how some like younger people can get involved unless they really try to, but yeah. Ames?
I'm going to start with my question that I seem to apparently ask everyone when they call on me.
Yep.
What inspired you to do this project?
So the question was, what inspired me to do this project? I wanted to do this project because I volunteered with the Maine Democratic Party before, and I really enjoyed it. And I also wanted to do something that I was very interested in, and that would help me in the future. So I thought that this was like the perfect project, and I really did think that it helped me plan some things that I wanted to do in the future. So the question was, when you pre-register at 16, are you already registered to vote at 18? And yes, you are. So the question was, do I find this process more difficult because I am young? I don't think so, just because most of the work that I was doing was remote. So I don't think they exactly knew that I was like a young person. Especially when I did this a few years ago when I was phone banking, no one really knew like who I was. Maybe they could tell by my voice, but I don't think it was much of a problem. So the question was, would I want to do something in the future like being a candidate? So I've actually thought about this. There was a time where I did want to do something like work in the White House, maybe be like a senator or be a part of Congress. I think now I'm leaning more towards like doing something with criminal justice as well. So I'm hoping that college I'll be able to balance some type of activity where I can do something with both in the political field and both in the criminal justice field. So yeah.
All right, thank you all so much for coming. Welcome to our senior project. My name is Brian.
I'm Andrew.
And this is our e-bike. So our goals for this project were to convert a bicycle to have an electric motor for Andrew to use in college, and to also build a homemade lithium-ion battery. So part of what this involves is learning how to salvage used batteries, learning how to use molds, fiberglass, and resin. And our main concern throughout all of this was to remain cost efficient compared to factory electric bikes, because we wanted to have this be a better option overall.
Okay, so research. This project started off with a lot of research. It took about a week to do all of it, get all the parts ordered. But first we had to start off with the motor. That was kind of our base for the project. We picked the Bafang 750 watt motor. They make one that's about 500 watts, they make one that's less, and they make one that's higher, but that costs like $1.5 grand, so I wasn't gonna go for that. So this one had a specific voltage range that we needed to build the battery for, and that's why we had to pick that first. So once we decided what battery we had to decide how to build the battery so that it would fit to the motor. We had to pick how many parallel groups there would be and how many series. Basically, parallel groups are when you connect the positives to the positives and the negatives to negatives, and it increases the amperage of the battery, which is the flow of the energy. If you connect positive to negative, like in a flashlight, you stick one on the end, then it increases the voltage, and your battery pack will have a higher voltage. If you do a combination of the both, you get higher amperage and higher voltage, which is what we did. We decided to go with 14 series and 7 parallel, which gave us about 58 volts full, which is way more than this motor is rated for, but it makes it go pretty fast.
So our first step in building this battery was to decide where we wanted to get our batteries from. And the type of cells that we use, the 18650 lithium-ion cells, when you buy them new, are about $4 or $5 each. And so that makes for a pretty expensive battery when you have 98 cells all connected together. And so we were looking for options around this, and we stumbled across used laptop batteries and overstock laptop batteries. And for that, each cartridge has 9 cells, and you could get 32 cartridges for about $80, which is a total of 288 cells. So we figured that that would be a much better option. The only catch was that we didn't really know that much about these cells themselves inside of the cartridges, like how good they would perform in our battery. So we had to go through an extensive testing period where we tested the initial voltage as soon as we cracked open the cartridge. We charged them fully, waited a week, and then measured the voltage drop to make sure that they could retain voltage pretty well. And then we discharged all of the batteries and measured their capacities and measured their internal resistance, and then recharged them fully to be used in our actual battery. And you can see in the bottom left here the type of chargers that we used. We organized all of this in a spreadsheet, which is much longer than that screenshot up there, but yeah.
Yeah, that bottom right photo, that's at USM. That's in the dorms. Mr. G did not know about it until the last night, until we were done disassembling the batteries. But we had a little sweatshop going, disassembling all the laptop batteries. Yeah, glad USM didn't find out. But
that was the first of many late nights of this project. So,
all right, so assembling and testing the battery. This part we kind of cranked out. Testing the batteries took about 2 weeks, so it took a long time. But we were left with about like a week and a half once we got that all set. So assembling and testing the battery, we had a lot of late nights, stayed up pretty late getting it together. But first we had to organize the cells. We had to decide which cells out of the 288 would be the best. We had to pick 98 of the best 288 cells. Once we picked which cells we were going to use, we had to figure out what cells would be best to work together. They had to be similar voltage levels and similar capacities so that the battery would work well. So after that, we got to work welding. You can see that top left photo. That's our first welding try. While the photo might look cool, that's actually a really crappy weld. There's not supposed to be sparks like that, but it's a cool photo. Then we put them together on that paper in the top middle, and Brian got to work welding and spent probably about 40 hours
It was a long time,
welding
yeah.
them together. Then we put the BMS, which is the battery management system. That makes sure the battery gets charged well, it gets charged evenly, so that you don't ruin it over time. And then that in the bottom right is what the battery looked like when we finished it. We heat shrinked it, and pretty proud of how it looks. It looks pretty professional.
So here comes the best part of our project, building the case. So our first thought for where to store the battery would be a luggage compartment that would be on the rack, actually, on the back of the bike here. But we tested riding the bike with a similar weight in a luggage off the back, and we really didn't like the feel. It wasn't very easy riding. The balance was kind of off. So we were looking for options to try to lower the center of gravity because the battery is pretty much the heaviest part. So we came up with the idea to build our own custom fiberglass case, which you can see in the middle here, mounted on a metal bracket on the frame. And so that involved making a mold out of foam, as you can see in the top left picture there. We wrapped it in aluminum tape to protect the foam from the resin of the fiberglass. And then we layered that mold with chop mat and then fiberglass fabric, as you can see in the top part. And once we got that all figured out, we trimmed it down to a rough shape, and we got a lot of weak spots and dings in there. So in order to reinforce that, we used, you can see in the bottom left, fiberglass Bondo.
And then after the fiberglass, we had to sand.
And then we needed more Bondo.
And then more sanding.
And more Bondo.
And more sanding.
And more Bondo.
And more sanding.
So that took quite a long time. And then after that, we had many layers of painting and sanding, and even when we got into the bracket, we had drilling and re-drilling, and it took a long time, but it worked out pretty well and looks pretty great, so we're pretty proud of that part.
So finishing and testing the bike. This part didn't take that long, but it was a learning process for sure. We figured out after we had built this whole e-bike that we actually knew nothing about bikes themselves. So it took a while to figure out how to tune the derailleur in the back, get the brakes working again so that you can actually stop and not run into a tree.
It's pretty important.
Yeah, it was pretty important. So we had to mount the battery. We had to weld on connecting components to connect it to the motor, and then we had to fine-tune some stuff. And this is what the power looked like when we finished it. It was pretty sweet. My dad wasn't too happy about digging up the driveway, but that's all right.
Oh, there it goes again. All right, so for this project, we used a lot of skills from FHS, mainly from engineering classes that we've both taken. I've taken Intro to Engineering and Design. Andrew has also taken that class, as well as Advanced Engineering and Design. And the main thing that we took from this class during this project was the engineering design process. And that involves all of the steps that we've kind of already outlined, but researching, planning, blueprinting, designing, all that, and then moving on to actually building the product. Testing our product, seeing the results, how can we change it? That was something like testing the weight of the battery off the back of the rack and adapting to make a lower center of gravity, and then improving on whatever we have. And we just kind of went through that cycle until what we found worked the best, and we've got a pretty great product. So.
Takeaways. But going into this, we both had a slight interest into electrical engineering. We didn't really know exactly what it was. We knew it could be cool, so that's what we used this opportunity for. We, after finishing it, we both definitely have a new inspired interest in the field, and we'll probably take some classes in college to further that interest. We gained a lot of knowledge about electricity itself, battery construction, how it works. We had to have a lot of organization and time management skills, especially with the ordering stuff. Some of these parts took 2 weeks to come in, and we had to make sure we had those done on time so we could get the battery together on time. and research, but especially hard work and dedication. In this photo, you can see it's a little past midnight. We had Frank 107.5 blasting Electric Avenue. You can see Brian in the corner hitting the robot. Yeah, it was a pretty good time.
Yeah. And so here we have a little video of Andrew on the bike on his road, bombing around. We were trying to get a top speed reading. I think we topped out at about 37 miles an hour in this video, so take a look. Hopefully it goes. There it is. And as you can tell, that was a pretty satisfying moment
Yeah.
for both of us to see it go that fast and not blow up. So
Yeah.
there we go.
And some thank yous. Thanks to Mr. G for being a project advisor, my dad for a ton of help on the project. Got stuck a few times and needed to find some tools. He was always there for that. Ms. Levitt, Ms. Peterson for this opportunity, our parents for sure for putting up with the late nights and loud music, and Freeport High School for the opportunity. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Yes.
Is it pedal assist? Do you have to pedal in order to activate the motor?
You can, yeah.
So the question was, is the motor pedal assist, or is it just, is it just pedal assist? Okay.
So most of the time when you're actually riding it, you'll just use pedal assist. It does have that you spin. Hold on. Anyway. The pedal assist, that's what happens most of the time, hopefully. Oh, it's off, that's why.
So you can see it kick in like pretty much instantly.
So yeah, it does have pedal assist and it goes pretty fast.
It's got quite a bit of juice in there too, so it can be kind of unwieldy, but it's a lot of fun.
So we use that most of the time riding, but if you don't want to pedal it, you can hit the throttle too, and it'll work like that too.
Yes, Owen.
Yeah, I'm going to keep the bike for college. I also paid for it, so I feel like that's fair.
Yeah, I'm broke, so.
Ames.
That's a noisy electric, but first of all, what inspired you to do this?
So the question was,
right.
what was our inspiration for doing the project? And I think that we originally wanted to do a go-kart, like a gas-powered go-kart, but we decided that it would be better to do something that we could use in the future other than just bombing around the yard. So,
Yeah, and we felt electricity would be battery-powered stuff like this is kind of the future, so it would be a good idea to know how it works.
just to have a better functionality for it all. And Andrew wanted something to get around in college, so it was a good option. Mr. A.
We probably should modify the brakes to fit the power that it has, but we haven't done that yet. We're living on the edge right now.
Yeah, we've still got some testing to do on that part, but.
You in the front.
So the question was, how far does the bike go and how long does it take to charge? We haven't gone through an entire charge yet, and we've done a considerable amount of riding around. It started out at about 58 volts, and we've probably put a couple hours on it on pretty much full throttle. And it's only dropped down to, what, 55?
Yeah, 55. We've gone 13 kilometers, however many miles that is.
And the way that these batteries work is that their initial charge is much higher than their nominal charge. So the graph kind of looks like a high charge, a little bit of a drop, then a good long flat charge that you can use for a long time, and then it drops off at the end. So we've really only seen that initial drop, so we really are not sure how far this bike can go, really.
We built the battery pretty big, though. We had to build a special case because it was so big. So it should have a pretty long life. We're guessing maybe like 80 miles, something around that range. Okay, all right.
Hi everyone, my name is Ella Quigg, and I'm here to show you all that basically, I'm not a serial killer. Even though I was working in my basement with one light shining over my head as I was working on organs. So that's for you all to decide if I am or not. Just a little precaution, during this presentation, there are images of pigs, more specifically inside of pigs, so now you're all prepared. So let's start at the beginning. When I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do for my project, I knew I wanted to do something surgical, or something to do with medicine, because that's what I'm going to college for. So I was thinking, and I realized I wanted to learn more about the body. So I went and I talked to our anatomy teacher, Miss Hunter, and she mentioned how she had a bunch of pigs left over from when we dissected them in March. Immediately, I was like, all right, I'll take them, hand them to me, I'll dissect them, and that'll be my project. So then I was like, how do I know what I'm doing? So I asked her if she had any sort of lab manual or book to follow, and she handed me this one. And as we were flipping through it, we realized that it was published in 1954, which is a wee bit outdated. So then we came to the conclusion of me making her a new lab manual that is updated. And that's what I have here. So going into my project, I had a couple of goals that were most important to me. The first was figuring out if this is where I really wanted to go with my path for life. And the second was improving my skill. And I definitely improved my skill. My first couple of pigs I dissected, I nicked the heart, the liver, and the lung, so those pigs would not have survived surgery. But by the last ones, they would have been roaming free in the mud or doing whatever pigs do, if they were alive. So then I definitely did figure out what I wanted to do, and this is what I would love to do, to be able to have the knowledge to help someone and make them better. I also had other smaller goals, like making my lab manual and learning more about the body. And I did. I mean, the proportions of everything in your body, your brain compared to your heart, compared to your intestines, it's just crazy how it all works together and makes sense. So to begin my project, I had quite a bit of steps. My first step was finding a space I wanted to work. And I decided on my basement, that way my family wouldn't have to smell dead pigs throughout the whole house. And that idea only lasted the first day, because by the second day, you could smell them in all of our rooms. So then I had to find my space, my workspace. And in our basement, we don't necessarily have a surgical table. So I had to improvise, and I used our ping pong table. And the first day I worked, I had one of those blue tarps, and I had that over my table, and it was just plain annoying. Every time I went to go grab a tool, it would crinkle and pop, and I could not deal with it. So then my dad had the idea of plastic wrapping the ping pong table. So we did. And as you can see on the slide, I have my sheet pan for dissecting. I have my tools on the left, and on the right, I have an old Christmas popcorn tin that I use for discarded parts. So my next step was taking photos of everything I came across. Any sort of cool thing, interesting thing, anything I came across. And my favorite photo was the second time I dissected the heart. I was so proud and happy of how it came out because I had all of the arteries and veins, and you can see the chambers of the heart so well. So I was really happy with that. And once I uploaded them to my slideshow online, I had to detail them. And then my last step was printing. As easy as all of that sounds, there were some hard parts. The first hard part I came across was the mouth. I had to go far enough into the mouth to get to the epiglottis, which is right here. And it's that thin piece of skin you can see that moves from your esophagus to your trachea, whether you're eating or breathing. And to get that far down, I had to pull apart the mouth and cut through the jaw, which was horrible for me. And I feel like it was so bad because when you're working on organs and inside the body, it's like you're trying to learn or trying to help the pig. But with that, I just felt so bad. And when I was doing the brain, for similar reasons to the mouth, it was hard for me because I feel like the brain is where it's part of who you are, it's who you are, and to dissect it and take it out, it just felt very wrong. The last thing that was hard for me was the diaphragm. I tried on 5 different pigs to get the diaphragm out, and I really couldn't do it. It was so difficult because it sits right on top of the liver, and it's very thin, and you have your peritoneum, which is your protective tissue that covers all of the organs in your abdomen, and it's really close-knit with the diaphragm, which makes it so much harder to get the diaphragm out, or at least it did for me. And the last hardest part I came across was my journals, which aren't hard whatsoever. It takes about 5 minutes at the end of your day to do your journals, say what you did. But it would be like 10 o'clock, and I'd be like, oh, I'm on TikTok, I'll do it at 11. 11 o'clock comes around, oh, I'm watching Grey's Anatomy, I'll do it tomorrow morning. And so I'd push them off until it was the last day of the week, and I would get a notification like, Ella, where are your journals at? And I was like, I'll get on them right now, I promise. So even though I didn't learn to do my journals every day, I did learn to do much more. I learned that it takes so much dedication and precision to make sure you're cutting the right way and in the right place so that you're not puncturing any organs. I learned that it takes much longer than I thought it would. In March, in class, each of us were assigned one pig and one system, and I had to do veins. And we did that over the course of 4 classes. Whereas when I was on my own, I was doing the entire body, so all of the systems and everything that I came across. So it took much longer than I thought it would. And the last thing I learned is that I want to do this. I would love to be able to learn and help people and show them what's going on in their body so that they can understand as well. Lastly, I would like to thank Ms. Hunter. I thank her for helping me, guiding me through this project, and being there for me. I would like to thank Ms. Levitt and Ms. Peterson for giving me the opportunity to be on this project. I would like to thank Ms. Blyer, Ms. Peterson, and Ms. Friesland for standing with me in that hallway that one afternoon, coming up with an amazing title. I would like to thank Ms. Hickey for helping me print my lab manual. And I would like to thank my family for dealing with the smell of the pigs wafting up throughout the house only during the second day. Thank you. The question was, what did I do with the pigs after? And I just threw them away. So it was kind of not that interesting, but you just put them in the trash. And everything. In the trash can. I did not name, the question was, did you name the pigs? I did not name any of the pigs. That would have been too personal. It would have made it a little bit harder, I think. The question was, how many total pigs did I dissect? And I had about 15 pigs to begin with, and there's 11 systems of the body, and I was thinking I would use one pig for each of the systems, and then I realized I can just do one pig for more than one system. So I only used about 8 pigs. So I have leftover pigs if anyone wants some. Yes, so this one right here, I have one on slideshow so that it's online and easier to access, and then she can print more if she needs some. But then I have this one that is not online, and it's in person, I guess. Yeah. Any other questions? Oh, yes. Yeah. So the question was to talk about the process of actually writing the manual. And it was more difficult than I thought it would be. I thought I would just kind of put the images on the slideshow and then write up a little bit. But as I was looking, I looked online and at other lab manuals I had to try to figure out the best way to make one. And so I took my pictures and I uploaded them onto Google Slides, and then I would write like the key notes for that picture. So if I had a picture of the heart, I would say like the right atrium, right ventricle, left ventricle. And then I wrote like a little 1 by each of them, and then a 1 by the words so that you could see which is what. Oh,
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Finn Sharp, and I'll be talking about my experience with my senior project of understanding the golf swing. There it goes. All right, so my project goals was to be able to shadow highly rated teaching professionals in the state of Maine. This was to deeply enhance my understanding of golf analytics, golf swing analytics, and teaching. Golf swing analytics is looking at somebody's swing and picking out minute things to help them progress and work towards creating a better golf game. I did this project and shadowed these golf pros to not only help other people, but better on my own game too. I'm going to be playing collegiately for the next 4 years at St. Anselm, and I need all the preparation and mindset I can possibly get to go into that. But more importantly, something I haven't yet to experience until the senior project is understanding the community that surrounds teaching golf. These professionals are almost single-handedly growing the game of golf on their own. They teach these junior golfers such as myself, and they continue to grow the game with new players each and every new generation. And I wanted to be able to experience that since I was one of those juniors who grew up with something like that. The process started with making contact with these professionals early on, still when there was snow on the ground, which was unfortunate, being that we live in a great state, but it's probably one of the worst states for golf. When I made contact with them, they didn't respond very quickly, but when I started getting inundated with the emails back, most of them didn't have lessons within that first week of senior project starting. And because of that, didn't have anything for that first week, and I needed to do something to make up for not being able to shadow lessons. So instead of shadowing lessons, I just decided to see where my own understanding was at prior to learning new information. So I decided to teach people on my own. I didn't know what this was going to look like, and I didn't know who I was going to teach, and it just so happened to be when I was on the range one day at my local golf course in Brunswick, one of the members approached me while he was also on the range and asked for some help. And over the next hour or so of me just blabbering on about as many things as possible, probably overwhelming him, he continued to hit golf shots and continued to enjoy the lesson, and I learned a lot about where I was at in my own understanding and where I was at going into these shadowing lessons. And I'll be bringing this same person up on stage later on. I won't introduce him yet, but he will be swinging the golf club, and this is just a video of what we were working on. He was taking it inside and getting stuck, so we were just working on getting it outside. Nice golf shot there. I know it looks like it's a small thing and there's not much to look at if you don't know what you're talking about, but to me this was a great first start to an introduction to teaching lessons, and I learned a lot from just this one experience. But the week following, I started my first lessons, and during these lessons I worked with 3 different pros: Chris Doherty at Augusta Country Club, Paul Pivarones at the Woodlands Country Club, and John King at Poland Springs, all top-rated pros within the state, and Paul and John are top-rated pros in the country, so they had plenty of knowledge to give me. During these lessons, I was taking notes as fiercely and as quickly as I possibly can to absorb as much information as possible. And if I was lucky, during these same lessons, separately from the player that was taking it, they would say brief things to me to give me a better understanding of what they were talking about, and that was probably one of the most helpful things during these shadows. After these lessons, I would debrief with the professional to talk about what they were teaching to the player and why they said certain things, when they said certain things, and how they said it. And it was an amazing experience to be able to talk with people that have made a career out of playing golf and of teaching golf. They had so much information and so much things to tell me, and I was picking their brains for hours, to the point where some of them even got annoyed with me a little bit. I'd never had an experience like that in this community of golf with that amount of information, and being able to talk to them about that kind of stuff was huge. But when I was working with John King at Poland Springs, he gave me the opportunity to shadow him during group lessons, which were completely different than individual lessons. He covered much more of a ground-based fundamentals of golf, and I, as cocky as I might be, thought, oh, I already know all this, it's not going to be very helpful, but I'll still come. And when I went there, he showed things to these, it was a ladies' clinic during a putting and chipping lessons that I had never heard before and I had never seen before. And getting down to those rudimentary rudimentary fundamentals of golf was just as helpful. I was going in depth with the individual lessons. And of course, after each of these lessons that I had saw, I took little moments of them and practiced them myself to see what the experience was. And I wanted to understand what they were teaching these players, and that moment when I was working by myself with those small moments that they had taught showed how impactful their teachings and understandings are to these players, and it showed me what a teaching professional could do and what he could have an amateur progress to. My takeaways from the senior project was enrichment in the game. I'd never been so immersed and experienced in something like this, even though I've been playing golf for over a decade now as a junior, and the amount of information I got was outstanding, and being able to create a relationship with these guys, these professionals, and even some of the people they were teaching lessons to was just amazing, and I cherish that so much, meeting these people and being able to talk with them and learn so much about something I care a lot about. And it helped me so much. Improving my game prior to going to the collegiate level will be just huge for me, and even if after college I want to pursue teaching professionally, it's a great start for this early on at this age. And more importantly, after college, I have now the fundamental ability to grow the game of golf just as they do, because I would love to be able to teach juniors as they were and grow the game as when I grew up with these teaching pros being taught lessons and things like that. My progression after this was, taking these mini lessons, and after they had shadowed other people, they offered to help me a little bit, and it was just an interesting thing to see them teach somebody else and then teach me. These are just some swings from after lessons I had taken. Here's a good one. If it loads. Absolutely smashed it. I mean, no question about it. But of course, in every golf lesson you have, there are moments where you will get worse before you get better, and of course, that happened with me too. During this month period, I hit bad shots too. Here we go. Yeah, so that's a very common attitude towards learning new things and being taught things that are uncomfortable and difficult. I sympathize with many people that I saw during shadowing these lessons. My Freeport High School skills going into this were extremely important. My note-taking skills and my complex thinking that I've learned while at FHS was very helpful in having mature, in-depth conversations with these golf professionals, and of course, emailing them prior and convincing them to allow me to shadow their lessons was a very important skill to have prior to going into this. And the communication skills that I've built and the relationships I built, I can thank Freeport High School for that, and that was a very big moment. And then just some thank yous. I'd like to thank my parents who are here today. I'd like to thank all the teachers at Freeport High School that guided me to this point. My friends, and of course my teammate Spalding there, winning state championships and everything like that. It's just everything is built up to this point. It was a nice sense of relief of being able to get to the senior project and participate in something like this. We'll wait for questions at the end. And like I said before, I'm going to teach a mini lesson up here. There's something similar to what you might see with other professional. The gentleman I'm bringing up here today is the same guy I worked with at Brunswick, and it's Zach Sklar, who had a senior at Freeport not too long ago, Ethan Sklar, and he's gonna hit some golf balls in front of hopefully not a very judgy audience. So probably good, right? It's an 8-iron. It's gonna shoot low, right? Yeah, you're fine. So usually at the start of the lessons, the pro will ask a million different questions to see if they've ever had any injuries or anything restricting their swing. And after those questions, the professional will let them warm up. So we're going to see Mr. Sklar warm up here for one shot. You know, it only takes one shot to warm up. So he's going to hit a little pitch shot into here. I mean, there we go. There we go. So you clearly can tell he's terrible at golf. I mean, that was not a very good swing. So as the professional, what I would do is I would stand here, I would talk to him about all the things he's doing wrong, which doesn't make any sense. It's kind of hurtful. And I would say, okay, Mr. Sklar, after watching video, you take the club very inside. So we're going to do a drill where we put the ball slightly outside of the ball he's hitting. And basically, his job is to try to take his hands and his body outside of that golf ball so that he doesn't get stuck while he's in the back and have nowhere to go. So he's going to hit one here. Nobody saw that. Nobody saw that one. Nobody saw that one. Doing new things is uncomfortable and new, especially in a group of people. Yeah. So, as a professional, you know, you're making your money's worth there, hearing that sound and seeing the player improve his swing in moments. We can hit another one here. Hit one more good one. Yeah, there it is, yeah. And that's just a small moment of what I saw while shadowing these lessons with these golf professionals all across the state. And I can't thank enough for Freeport High School giving me this opportunity. And a round of applause for Mr. Sklar. All right, I guess we could move on to questions now. Yeah? Oh, shit. Miss Blyer.
Do you think you will coach or teach the game of golf in your future?
So the question is if I will coach or teach the game of golf in the future. That depends. That all depends on how my college years go playing golf. You know, if I play well, or if I play well enough, I really would like to be an assistant coach somewhere and be able to get. If you're an assistant coach somewhere, they pay for your school while you go there, and you can get your master's degree. But I'd also be able to still play golf and be with kids or guys my age and still be involved in that community, and that's my plan. If everything goes right. Miss Levitt.
What's the most useful piece of information that you didn't already know?
The question was, what was the most useful piece of information I learned about golf that I didn't already know? And it was probably some of the questions that were asked prior to the lesson starting. It was if you have any like surgeries, if you have any like replaced body, like that kind of thing, any ailments that possibly block your golf swing. And I had never really thought of that. I'm a young man. I'm flexible. I've been able to play golf in a million different ways. And when you look at an older gentleman or an older woman, they might not be able to do the same things that I'm able to. So that was an important question, and I didn't realize that I might have to ask that in the future if I'm teaching somebody. Miss Hunter.
How easy is it for you to, like, when you watch someone swing, to see what they're doing wrong? Does that come naturally to you, or are you like, I don't know what that guy's doing?
The question is if I watch a video like I showed today, if I can pick out immediately what they're doing wrong. And I'd say, for the most part, yes, I can pick out the obvious things, but that's because I've been playing for so long, and I've talked with so many different professionals. And just my experience, I've been able to pick it out, but it doesn't come quickly. I would say even people that have been playing for 20 years still might not be able to take a video of their own swing and look at it and understand really what's going on. So you have to you have to almost teach yourself or have somebody teach you to be able to understand it. Up there. Yeah, you. Yeah, Ames.
What was your favorite thing, what was your overall favorite thing that you enjoyed about creating this project?
The question was, what was my favorite thing overall about creating this project? And I'd say being able to spend time with these golf professionals and be able to pick their brains and see what they're thinking and why and what they do for a living. Just being able to sit down and talk with them, even if it was separate from the lesson that I was shadowing. Just being able to sit down and talk with guys that do this for a living is very interesting to me. Maybe not other people, but it's interesting to me.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to my presentation, What to Do and Not to Do When Going Fishing. So my original goals for this project were spread over 4 weeks and divided into 3 major parts. And although things didn't go quite to plan, they went relatively well. So week 1, I decided to create a usable raft for my project to explore main bodies of water and mixed in weeks 2 and 3. And then in week 4, I was going to document all the information I gathered onto an infographic created in InDesign, one of my graphic design softwares that I'm planning to do in college. Part 1 went pretty smoothly. I got some styrofoam billets, which you can see on the bottom picture there on your left. And so I disassembled some pallets and got some spare wood I had around and created a raft, which you can see that floated relatively well, but there were definitely some difficulties. The first day I went to Casco Bay to test out my raft, I paddled about 100 feet out onto the water, and then I turned around to go back in, and I realized that it was pretty windy, and the wind was pushing against my raft. And so I was ready to go back in, so I started paddling, and it took me about 35 minutes to travel 100 feet. That's when I knew my project wasn't going exactly how I had hoped. And that continued on my next trip, which I went to a smaller lake with less wind, but through bringing my raft out and in of the car, it started to get a lot more wobbly, and I was having trouble fishing, and then on my last trip out on the raft, it actually flipped over and sank, which was quite heartbreaking, to say the least. So I decided to change my plans a little and head out on a kayak onto an island with only potatoes and catching fish and eating them for a couple days. And this didn't go as planned either, but I did have some successes. I definitely caught fish. I caught 3 nice fish, cooked two of them, and left one of them into the lake. And I was able to transport a lot of equipment out onto the lake, which you can see in a couple of the pictures. Everything was looking good. I ate the fish, and then I got very sick because I must have undercooked the food because the wind was very strong, and that was kind of taking out the light of my stove that I brought. So I decided to head in and try something else. All right, this is the resolution to my project, part 3. I decided I needed to do an infographic still, but I only had caught 3 fish, and I didn't think that was a great infographic. So I decided to do one on how to fish and all the nuances, hooks, different lines you use, and I decided to still go fishing at Sebago Lake and Anabasic Hook Lake and see how I can do camping out of my car instead of traveling to an island with just potatoes. The challenges on the first lake I went to, Sebago Lake, was the wind. It was pretty windy, but I got my campsite set up, and that went well. And so I went out on the lake. I casted 2 times, and on my second time, my pole snapped in half. You can see that on one of the pictures up there, and I was not too happy about that. I still tried to fish with it, but it was definitely pretty difficult. But my second trip after my raft crashed was Anabasic Hook Lake, and that went pretty well. I caught 7 different fish, camped over 2 days, and you can see a couple of the fish I caught pictured down there. And I wound up getting a decent amount of evidence for my infographic, which I included in part of it, as well as all the original stuff I had planned. And now I will show my infographic. All right, and this is the infographic I created. And here's the section I had for my senior project, all the different fish I caught on the different lakes I traveled to, and all this information I got from my past experiences because I've been fishing for quite a while, and also I researched pretty heavily into different hooks and nuanced things involving fishing. All right, and back to my presentation. The takeaways for this project, I definitely had a lot of them since it didn't go exactly to plan. The importance of a plan was one of them. When I started this project, I didn't really think about the weather and how I might not get enough opportunities to go when it's really nice and prime conditions. And then patience. because every time something went wrong in my project, I tended to panic a lot and not really think about it logically, and that was something I learned in coordination with the next two, working problems and not giving up, which leads into the thank yous. I want to thank Becky Peterson for helping me not give up, because there was one time I went into her office and I was like, I just want to give up. This is not going well. My raft crashed, and she really helped to make sure I didn't give up, which turned out to be pretty good. And then Cole Phillips, my awesome advisor, and my father, who dealt with all my panicking and brought my kayak to many different lakes, took much time out of his day, and I would not be up here without him, so thank you. And questions? Jack?
Did the fish taste good?
I can't say it was a very good fish, in all honesty. And Bridge? Did I name any of the fish I caught? I named one, Bob Marley II, about 3 seconds ago. And Mr. Phillips?
I wonder how this sort of informed moving forward for you. Like, you've obviously done a really cool job on that infographic. It's comprehensive, but there's so much into it. I wonder, is this a path you want to go down? I don't know what you would call it, but sort of like working with wildlife, educating people on wildlife, that kind of thing.
It definitely inspired me to fish more, definitely with a boat. I want to go on a boat instead of a raft or a kayak. But learning all about fishing is really interesting and makes me want to go fishing again. We recently sold our boat, so I haven't been fishing a lot this year, but it definitely made me want to go more than I did when I started the project. And Kirsten? Yes, I caught a largemouth bass, a smallmouth bass, a pike, a crappie, and a couple bluegill. And back there?
What made you choose to build a raft instead of just starting off with a kayak?
The question was, how did I come to the idea of a raft? And I really I wanted it to stretch a while. I didn't want to be able to just go out quickly and get it done. And it filled up the first week, and that made sure I'd have a full project. And way back there? Overall, I'd say the infographic was, because it didn't really have anything that could go wrong with it. And after raft sinking, I wanted something that I knew I could get done. And right there?
What's the biggest fish you caught?
Biggest fish I caught was a pike that was about 3 feet and 30 pounds.